Madam Secretary, it appears that the starting gun has gone off.
Good morning, everyone. Suzanne Norton, State Construction Department, Management Administrator, and in that function, Secretary to you, the State Building Commission. We will open the meeting with a roll call. Superintendent Degenfelder.
Present.
Treasurer Meyer.
Here.
Auditor Racinas.
Here.
Secretary Gray.
Here.
Governor Gordon.
Here.
We also have legislative liaisons here. Senator Driscoll. I've seen him. He's right there. He'll be right back. Senator Landon. Representative Nicholas. And I'm not sure if Representative Angelos is here virtually. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman,
Please proceed.
I would move approval of the agenda.
It's been moved by the treasurer, seconded by the superintendent to move the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the meeting minutes.
Second.
You've all seen the minutes, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes are carried. Mr. Treasurer is on a roll this morning.
We've got you all primed with that extra meeting you just did. Thank you. Item 2 is SBC Secretary comments. And since we have returning and new members, mostly for your information and reference, I've included additional print materials in our packet for you that include the State Construction Department annual report, which gives an overall view of our entire department's function, the statutes that apply, the agencies we serve, our accomplishments, some of our challenges. And I encourage you to dive deep into that as we go forward and consider how to continue best addressing the best care and of our state facilities. In the next tab 2B, we have the current SBC statutes and SBC rules. We'll note that both the statutes and rules may have some small modifications related to House Bill 86 regarding public property, and also House Bill 172 related to concealed carry, permitted carry, constitutional carry, which we'll discuss under item 7 in the working group summaries. Tab 2C is our agency facility plan template for this year. Ultimately, this facility plan template helps us check in with all agencies that own facilities, take care of them. With House Bill 86, we've made some changes that we've been working towards over the last 3 or so years in regard to understanding if they're properly funded and staffed for preventive and routine maintenance. We've been requesting that, but now that template will require that information, and it's been a good work in process to polish how we're asking for that information to align with budget requests.
And Madam Secretary, just with regard to some of the newer members, particularly Representative Angelos, do you want to cover just a little bit of history of the evolution of this process?
Yes. So I've been with the Construction Management Division I'm working on my 18th year. And when I started, we were part of the Department of A&I, but in 2016, we were reorganized to join the State Construction Department, who had more robust processes set up and a planning division that helped us implement this planning process for state agencies in the similar way to was occurring already for K-12 schools in the work that the School Facilities Commission and Division does. This process starts in the spring. We do it every year. And it's a check-in between Construction Management Division and every agency, which are noted in the packet. And it's where we are working towards meeting the requirements of our SBC rules that were developed in 2022 to be able to paint a picture of a 25-year real property master plan, and now encompassing all the way from routine and preventive maintenance all the way towards forecasting development of certain facilities that are, at their end of their life cycle and potentially working towards a long-term plan of being relocated to different locations and so on.
Thanks. And I think of particular importance since I've been on this commission to actually think ahead and figure out how maintenance works and how important it is. Because I do remember back to 2012 that a lot of times our maintenance was emergency, always more expensive, always defeated depreciation in the process. So I think having a uniform way of looking at these has been a valuable exercise.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I agree 100%. Yeah, we are really making good progress on development of processes to capture that. A couple points that came to mind while you were speaking is that, Wyoming has been really proud about our credit rating. And deferred maintenance is actually considered debt. And to properly fund maintenance, it's pennies now rather than pounds later,
Yep.
or millions later.
Thanks. Please proceed.
I would highlight in the facility plan a couple of things related to the facility condition assessment process, which is the needs assessment that's defined in statute and rule. We received 13 responses to an RFQ last week. We'll be shortlisting and interviewing to get that process going, and then having an outreach statewide to take a look at every state facility and evaluate it on a component by component basis. I'm going to ask Director McComey to chime in a little bit here on that process and criteria. You might want to refer to page 74 of the packet.
Director McComey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Del McComey, Director for the State Construction Department. About a year and a half ago, the department undertook a new facility condition assessment of buildings on the K-12 side of the house. And it was different than what was done in the past, in the fact that we've done a number of building assessments over the years, but they're really more of a snapshot in time. And so they looked at every single building, gave you a facility condition index, which was defined as the difference between the deferred needs that were found in the review of all the buildings versus the cost replacement value of the building. And that came out with a point score. As we move forward on the state side now, we're going to try and utilize a similar system in that the new system looks ahead not only at that snapshot in time, but looked at all the components of the building, analyzed life cycle costs of those buildings, and then gives us kind of a 20-year look into the future. So to your comments earlier, Governor, of trying to look forward, tie this all together with routine maintenance, major maintenance, this will really give us that planning tool on the depreciation and the degradation of our buildings, give us the managers for the various agencies the opportunity to plan ahead for when life cycle of end of life of components is coming about. And then we'll capture that into our AIM system, similar as we're doing on the school side. But at the same time, we'll then take the dollars that we spend on major maintenance, put that back into the program and see what kind of adjustment to the scores And hopefully that'll give us kind of really an idea of where we're setting in the future. I think the other good planning tool that will tie into that is in House Bill 86. Part of that talked about a 20-year strategic plan for facilities, and that's all facilities for the state, including the K-12 schools. So when we look ahead to that, I think that'll give certainly the policymakers, the legislature, an idea of what's coming up in the future for different types of projects and funding needs well in advance into the future. So we're eager to get started on that. Hopefully we'll have, I think the timeline is to have that completed in October of this year. Then we can get it put into the AIM system and provide some better information and tools to the commission. So at one point in time, what I'd like to do is probably demonstrate what that looks like in the future through the AIM system, in case anybody has questions on individual buildings or how that's going to look and how we'll manage that with all of the agency heads.
Thanks. Please.
Thank you. Item 2D is a review of bills with impact to the state construction department for both the supplemental session and the budget session. On page 90, the funding for in House Bill 1, the funding for our 20-year strategic plan that was a part of House Bill 86 was postponed indefinitely. House Bill 86, public property building amendments, we feel is a really good step for maintenance of state buildings. And we'll be working to bring changes, understand the changes to statute, potentially bring changes to our rules as a result of that bill. It's effective July 1st, 2025. And again, under item 7, we'll discuss the impacts of House Bill 172. We will be, you'll see on page 91 that the CAPCON bill also did not pass in 2024, but some projects did move forward. On page 92, you'll see, I'm sorry. Page 92, you will see a preliminary forecast of capital construction requests. And I first want to note that major maintenance is included in this amount, which typically goes into the budget bill, not into the capital construction request. So about half of that amount is an estimate of major maintenance. Please note that it is based on 2023 square footage, does not include buildings that have been built since then. And the figure is at 2.56%. The remaining items will be coming forward again, we believe. We'll verify that in the facility planning process and also be reevaluating things for changes in projects, any value engineering that we might be able to do, project changes, but of course, we're going to have to consider inflationary changes.
And Madam Secretary, I think the other thing to bear in mind, I think you've broken it out here, is that there are, particularly in our community colleges and some other places, some funds that are not state funds. They're not taxpayer dollars, but they need authorization in order to be expended. When some of those funds are held up, they set back programs and sometimes imperil future contributions on that. I think about LCCC's automotive building and some of those things. For example, I think Sheridan College has had its dental hygienist program affected by that in the past, and a couple of others along those lines.
Mr. Chairman, exactly. We have had a number of bills that impacted both federal funds, private funds, community funds that have not been able to move forward. The LCCC projects in particular, those projects are here because they prevent ongoing major maintenance and improve the condition of facilities drastically. And with those failures, it makes it difficult to move forward with required work to
Mr. Chairman,
preserve state assets.
Mr. Treasurer.
on those private funds, I think you cut maybe two classes of private funds. One where the money is spent and the square footage is not included in the formula for major maintenance, which is a lot of times it's a finite pool. And then you start spreading major maintenance funds over more square feet. But there are some private funds that necessarily the building wouldn't go into the square footage, although I think they're few and far between formula. That's really where I think the rub is on that, is trying to make sure that some colleges or programs overbuild to the extent that the square footage participation in other ones that aren't building to keep up the pace with the amount of funds going back into those are left at a disadvantaged state. So that's really, I think, kind of looking at trying to get rid of the approval on funds that don't enter into private funds that don't enter into the square footage formulation for major maintenance. I think if we could get those through the legislative process that said that they didn't need to be approved and couldn't go onto the funding formula without some kind of a buy-in to equalize the impact between the colleges. So I think it's some things that might help in different ways. Like I say, that I think a lot of those ones that are 100% private funded or don't have any state funds attached to them rather are probably few and far between.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, tab 2F, page 93 is a summary of the permits for this quarter for public area use. If there are no questions on that, we'll move to item 3, the financial reports. Page 94 covers the SBC contingency, for which we generally plan to keep a balance of $7.8 million with $7.45 available for property acquisition. We did request a replenishment to the $7.8 million funding level, but without that authorization, our effective projected balance is about $2.9 million. We anticipate requesting approximately $5 million for the biennium. The SBC flex appropriation is intended to cover inflationary considerations for projects that can't be value engineered back to budget. Ideally, we keep a 5% of the total of all CapCon projects for that. And it's holding pretty steady, especially with the 2022-23 creation of the state facility inflation reserve account for both state projects and community college projects. There are no projects approved for funds during this reporting period, but we do have one pending for a community college project. Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions on that, item 4, capital construction and major maintenance project updates by construction supervisor, Dave Webb.
Mr. Webb.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Dave Webb, State Construction Supervisor, Construction Management Division. Item 4 is capital construction major maintenance reports. Wyoming Girls School Stolt Hall Administration Education Building Level 3 Design and Construction. They're currently at the 95% construction documents and planned on March 24th, 2025 for 100%. They have a CMAR on board and we'll be bidding that project out in April of this month. Next project is Wyoming Boys School Maintenance Storage Building. This project is 20% complete and is scheduled to be completed September 2025.
And please, if there are questions, just speak up. Don't proceed.
Department of Administration Information, 4th-floor renovation of Hathaway Building. Currently, they're under budget and scheduled to complete it on time. And that is July of 2025. Page 103. And I'm going to skip over some of the lesser projects and just go right to the CapCon. Fire Academy Training Access in Riverton, Wyoming. They've met substantial completion in 2024 and they're under warranty.
Mr. Webb, I think on that, there was a question at one point, I think I asked you about with the parking lot. That is okay.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
OSLI, the Hella Base in Casper, Wyoming. The design is at 95% complete and will be put out to bid this month.
Is there, on that, or is there any federal match that we should be concerned about? No, okay, thank you.
And then we do have Ranch A, repair and restoration, lodge exterior. The project is out to bid and under review. The work is anticipated to start in the summer of 2025. Ranch A R&D Genetics Lab roof replacement. Proposals for the design and engineering of the roof have been received and selection is underway. So to reiterate, we are doing work at Ranch A.
Is there anyone here that's interested in that?
Oh, wait, a seat is empty. Wyoming State Fair, Dairy Bar on level 1 and 2. The project is anticipated to be complete mid-2025. And I think that's going to be it's going to coincide with the master plan update, State Fair master plan update, which will continue throughout the summer and be completed shortly after the 2025 State Fair. Page 106. CWC Jackson Outreach Project. We're 10% complete construction and the project is scheduled to be completed early 2026. Northwest College Orendorf Building Capital Renewal Project. We have a CMAR on board and we're going through the priorities of that project and its project's scheduled to be completed the winter of 2025. Western Wyoming Community College Health Sciences Facility, Rock Springs. Their project is scheduled to be completed towards the end of summer of 2025. Laramie County Community Track renovation. This project is scheduled to be completed before summer of 2025. Laramie County Community College exterior facade renewal. This is phase 1 and 2. Phase 1 of the project is scheduled to be completed the summer of 2025, and phase 2 has been bid out and should commence in the next month. Page 108. Wyoming Capital Acoustics Project. Oh,
Just to
a
follow up,
representative, yeah.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on the exterior of phase one. When you read it, it talks about there's a delay in some of the manufacturing metals, photovoltaic panels. Do we know how big of a delay that is, or if that is interfering with the cost overruns or issues with the project?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, they had some delays in the metal panel due to the color that they had chosen. So they got those in. They're waiting on some soffit pieces. The phenolic panels have arrived and they're installing those as we speak. So there's no delay. It's more of schedule. They had to rearrange the schedule to get those in.
Okay.
Wyoming Capital Acoustics Project. 50% construction documents have been submitted. And they're going to be presented to the committee this month.
Yeah, I've got a question on that one.
Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much has been spent so far on the acoustics situation? I mean, there was a sort of a comment earlier about how I was in a meeting and I'm trying to remember what the context was, but somebody was talking about how acoustics have always been in an issue in the Capitol, and they dealt with it in the past by bringing in some I forgot what they brought in, but it was something that was very inexpensive. And now, I mean, it seems like we're in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And I just want to make sure I understand what the number is, where we're at, and how it continues to grow.
Mr. Chairman, Secretary Gray, there is an appropriation for $1 million to address acoustical issues in the state capitol. There are a few rooms and considerations that have the highest priority. However, the approach for solving those has been first with the lowest cost, including microphone user training, which is a zero cost to, make sure we're using our microphones properly, make sure we're not putting objects in front of our speakers that reinforce the speech. The design team is under contract for design. I can't tell you off the top of my head how much that is, but it's probably less than $200,000. And so that's where we're at with the $1 million. It's not anticipated that we will continue to ask for additional funding for that. We will be addressing the most critical issues with that appropriation in a priority order. And then we will work with the subcommittee for the exhibits wayfinding that's referenced in that statute for that oversight to prioritize the work that will be done. In addition to that, we believe that there is some changes that can be made to the individual heating and cooling units in some of the spaces in the Capitol that can be performed, either self-performed by state staff or with local contractors that are not a significant impact. So it's not really a snowballing project at all from my perspective.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a follow-up here.
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm not an acoustic master, and so I want to understand a little bit more in our oversight role. It's all coming back to me now. I was in this meeting and somebody was talking about how in the records, this has always been an issue in the Wyoming State Capitol, and in early sessions, what they did was they actually brought in some hay bales to kind of help with some acoustical issues. I want to be clear for the left-wing media. I'm not advocating that as the answer, but it just seems like here the strategy is probably very similar, right? You want to have something in the room that 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 helps in spreading out the sound, right? And so what is the strategy in fixing these issues? Because I mean, has it changed since the late 1800s, early 1900s, or is it basically the same concept that you want to try to get the sound vibrations to spread more fully across the room?
Madam Auditor.
Mr. Secretary, those are super questions, and myself, like you, are totally not an acoustics expert, although now I'm learning just enough to be dangerous because I have been presented with these, very, very long reports. You're correct. And I'll paraphrase the acoustics conversation so far, and anyone please jump in and correct me. This by and large, this came from the legislative branch. I don't think anybody on the executive branch asked or that's accurate, right, Suzanne? Yeah, nobody on the executive branch asked for this or has asked for additional money, but it's very much come from the legislative branch saying, here is money and get this done. That being said, I think everyone's first initial reaction was, oh my goodness, we can't touch anything in the Capitol because we have just spent so much money redoing it, especially in some of these sensitive places. And then to your point, what state construction discovered, which was informative and also sort of funny, was putting this project out to bid and contracting with someone, I think a little bit after the turn of the century, a little bit after 1900, to put up acoustic panels in some of these toughest areas. And the reason that was relevant is I think many of us, or myself included, had this thought process that, oh my gosh, we can't alter any of these spaces that we've just spent money on. And then it turns out that some of this acoustic paneling, it is actually historically accurate. But the way we've tackled it so far, and again, we're still somewhat early in the process, is lowest cost and least visual impact options first, like Suzanne spoke to. And then the only places where we would be looking into some of those more, I'm going to call them invasive, but that's not terribly accurate, would be where the sound is the absolute worst. And I'm guessing those won't be a surprise to you. It's the Joint Appropriations Room, the Historical Supreme Court, and then the floors of the chambers. So at least from my standpoint on the wayfinding committee, this isn't really the wayfinding committee's bag. However, it's gotten sort of reported under there, if that makes sense. From my standpoint, we are being very cautious and communicating, really expect to communicate heavily with management council, recognizing those are their spaces. And so what they want or don't want done, or what they want to pay for or don't want to pay for example, in the Joint Appropriations Room, is really kind of going to be their decision. Hopefully that answered your question.
And Madam
Yeah, well,
please go ahead, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of the things on that. I mean, I think, one, I want to clarify off that, for the media as well. This was a pre 2025 appropriation. So it's before the current sitting of the legislature. And I'm very confident it would not go through with the current sitting of the legislature. But, I'm wondering a little bit too, and maybe this is a question a little bit for the governor, what the impoundment authority of the executive branch is, and how much that's been explored. Because, I mean, we're seeing that with the wonderful work of President Trump, where, when the Congress is, saying that they're going to appropriate $1 billion for X, And if the executive branch finds that they either don't need to do it, or they can do it for $10,000, that they're trying to impound those funds, and they have the clear legal authority to do that. So I'm wondering the same thing here. What over the years have been the legal precedents on this? Because, the auditor seems to suggest that this is not uh, an executive thing, but at the same time, I think that there very well is the ability for us to exert some discretion here. So I'm wondering that a little bit is been the evaluation from the governor on that impoundment authority and the state construction department.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I can tell you that we have not looked at that, so it's a good suggestion, and we'll consider it.
Yeah,
Madam-
I'm wondering, I mean, I'm assuming that, maybe in the next meeting, I'll look at a motion here, but, given the current, intent of the legislature, I just think it's time for us to just, go ahead and roll this back and look a little bit at that authority, because ultimately it isn't, we can pass the buck all day, but there is a responsibility here with this board, and so I think we need to go ahead and follow the lead of President Trump on looking at some of these unnecessary appropriations and doge it, if you will.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Treasurer.
Yeah, I think it's would behoove us to actually make informed decisions, and there's a lot of testimony that has gone into the wayfinding committee from the experts here that have gone in and measured the decibels in practically every room in the Capitol, and have a pretty good idea of the effect of I guess having an efficient and run meeting and meeting that has the ability of all of the public to actually understand what's said at the dais on a lot of these different areas. So I think, Mr. Chairman, before we go shoot and aim, I think we should probably take the time to see what information can be disseminated, which was the auditor had in front of the wayfinding committee, so everybody can have at least a semblance of rudimentary understanding of acoustics before we decide to make any decisions.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I do have one follow-up. I think that certainly there have always been some acoustical issues, but the question is why is this costing, or why is the appropriation $1 million? And that's a huge sum of money, and I don't think consistent with fiscal prudence. And then also, I mean, I think it's year 7 of this administration, and I really think governor needs to be looking at impoundment and what that looks like in Wyoming. So that's another suggestion I have.
Very good. Anything more? Mr. Representative Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. So first of all, I was chair of appropriations when we put this money into the budget. The budget specifically says it will only be used for acoustics and that it's non-impoundable and it can't be used for any other purpose. And we probably did that for a good reason. For some folks who don't like what the legislature does, but wants to do something outside of the realm of the legislature, which is probably unconstitutional and illegal. But we'd be happy to take on that battle if you choose to do so. You may recall that the acoustics was always in the plan for the Capitol. It got value and engineered out towards the end of the process when we were constructing the Capitol. But I can also tell you that from a legislative standpoint, there was an overwhelming majority of both House and Senate who voted for the additional dollars for acoustics because of the inability to understand each other during the Joint Appropriations Committee meetings in 110 and 111 because the sound just doesn't work. So we're trying to find a reasonable and economic way to fix it, and we will continue to do our best to make the state capitol a place of convenience where people can enjoy and understand and be part of the process.
Very
Mr.
good.
Chairman, I have a question for our legislative liaison.
Mr. Secretary, yeah, I think you've made a point, but do you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I do. I have a question for him. Representative Nicholas, my question is, why do you think this would cost $1 million? What was the analysis on that? And that's the issue I've been trying to get at is why is that require that level of expense? And is your interpretation of impoundment that the executive branch would have to spend the full $1 million no matter what, and it will never revert? Is that what you're saying? And I'm just asking questions about it and surprised that the governor doesn't have an answer on what the president is.
Secretary, let me be clear. We have a report we're going through. You've raised an issue that has been raised by President Trump, and that is with the executive branch and the Congress. Wyoming has its own situation. We can have a go back and forth. It seems like you are particularly attentive to media. You've mentioned that 2 times. I'm happy to consider this, but I guess I'm sort of thinking that we have matters to attend to other than just media representations.
No. I was alluding earlier to false statements that they might make. And please, if you could cease interrupting me, I would appreciate it, and trying to intimidate and stop these questions from being asked. I would like to know why the legislature thought at that time that this costs $1 million. And if you feel that we can do this cheaper, that that you would think that is illegal for us to not spend the full $1 million. It's 2 questions, and it's related to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
Yeah, point of order. I guess on this one here, I think we're getting a little bit out of bounds on what our duties are today. But I'll just
Mr. Chairman, let me respond to that point. Point of order.
Hold on, I will
interrupt me.
mute you, sir. The treasurer has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, a point of information is that there are 5 people on this panel sitting up here who have gone through extensive discussions on acoustics. And the secretary is not one of them. And what he needs to do is get up to speed with the other 5 members on the panel on acoustics. And the questions that he's asking is why it's $1 million, why it's this, and why it's not, are readily available. If he wants to take the time and go back and research that, then we can have at another time, we can put this on our agenda if we want to go into the acoustics and actually look at it. But please take the time to be informed before you have solutions to this to problems that probably most likely do not exist.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order.
Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, we have on our agenda reports, expense reports as to projects that have been undertaken by the State Construction Department. I not only have the right, I have the duty to ask questions about the expenses and the functions that are being undertaken in our role of oversight. So I have 2 questions related to the report, which is 1, what was the background on how the legislature came up with the $1 million appropriation? And 2, if we are able to do it more cheaply than that, which Ms. Norton in her testimony seemed to suggest that we would be able to do, are we able to revert those funds? And is that in the legislature's mind or in our liaison's mind an illegal impoundment? That's my questions.
And those are very good questions, Mr. Secretary. The question I have for you, have you been involved with any of the discussion on this at all, historically? Or are you using this moment to be able to bring yourself up to speed?
Mr. Chairman, I'm asking questions. I've asked this now 3 meetings in a row, I believe. I don't know if you remember that. And I've never been able to get answers on these issues.
So
I think
I'll
I'm on
take
the
it
third
you
meeting in a
have
row
not
where
made
this
your,
is
I'll take it that you have not acquainted yourself with the history. I have,
Mr. Chairman,
I have
the
told you,
role of this board is to ask questions on these projects and to use this opportunity to involve themselves and to provide oversight on these questions. So the fact that I'm not an expert on it makes it all the more reason why we should be using this as an opportunity to learn together.
and I appreciate that, Mr. Secretary. So I'm going to say, let's keep this conversation going. If people want to leave the room while the secretary pursues these questions, that is up to you. The secretary needs to be brought back on the legislative history. I think maybe what we should do, Senator Landon, do we need to get the minutes or the report or the digest from the legislature to kind of go through this? And then I think perhaps a full accounting of the work that you've done, Madam Auditor, would be helpful with the committee so that we have, I think probably, do you think we can handle it in a half hour, an hour? I mean, there's a lot of history here that we have to go through.
Mr. Chairman, one next step might be for you to recognize Representative Nicholas and see if he had any answers to my questions. And that is actually one possible step. And I don't think it'll take a half an hour. I think it might take 90 seconds.
So, Mr. Secretary, am I taking it you're suggesting how I should run the meeting?
No, I think that's past practice has been for you to ask somebody a question that has been asked a question. It's always been, that's past practice, and you seem to be taking some sort of new standpoint to try to prove a point. So we
I'm
can't.
not trying to prove a point. I asked you a question, you've never answered it. I did ask Senator Landon a question, what he thought, simply because this is a back and forth between you and Senator Nicholas for the most part, or between you and me. So Senator Landon, just because I think it's time to get a little more on track.
So, Mr. Chairman, Governor, thank you. Just a couple of things. First, every meeting that we've had of the Wayfinding and Exhibit Committee has been public, and it's taken place here in the Capitol Square. As the treasurer pointed out, there are 5 of us seated up here who have been involved all the way through for the last 2.5 years on many fronts, including this work that we've tried to do that Representative Nicholas explained was all about trying to create an environment where important work can be done and people can hear each other. When the Appropriations Committee took this up in, I believe, 23, you have to go back a couple of years, it was all based on projections that state construction helped us to obtain. We eventually hired those consultants who have been working this past year to identify things that we can do in our capital. And as Ms. Norris pointed out, much of that work has been we've been able to accomplish, Governor, by simply using major maintenance funding and going into some of those HVAC systems to renovate the microphone systems throughout the Capitol. And so we've been in the process of doing that. Regarding whatever amount is going to be expended, we'll take that up later on this month in a public meeting. Secretary would be welcome at any time if he'd like to stop in and go through in detail all of what might be recommended. We have not seen exactly what will come in the meeting later this month, Governor, but we will make recommendations as a wayfinding subcommittee on up to this body. I anticipate that some of that will include work into the foundations of the building. That's when you run quite an expense. If you try to go up into the roofing to put new microphones and speaker systems, for example, some of that paneling can be very expensive, as can window coverings and various things. Honestly, I don't believe that budget figure that was put in place a couple of years ago is to be spent for anything else. And that's why we're spending our time and doing diligent work to make sure that we come back with the recommendation that the SBC can be comfortable with. So I hope that helps, Governor.
Senator, let me ask, is that meeting open?
Absolutely. Any of our meetings of the Wayfinding and Exhibit Committee, we're very careful. They are announced. They take place in a public environment. We even invite the public to weigh in.
Do you invite the media as well?
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
media is invited. In
Okay.
fact, the media has come at various times. We have representation from the executive branch and from the legislative branch. I think it's been a good process and it's been very public.
Seems to me that might be a more appropriate venue to answer these questions.
Well,
Governor,
Mr. Chairman,
I'd be happy to walk anybody through any of the work that we do. It's very detailed. It takes quite a bit of time to get up to speed, but we'd be happy to help the secretary do that.
And I look forward to your recommendations.
well,
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thanks for that.
Go ahead, Mr. Secretary.
Happy to continue to engage, but I don't think $1 million is necessary on this. And I know that could be brushed off, as we've seen the governor try to do here for the last half hour, that I'm just somehow not informed. But I think, I was in the legislature when this was debated, and so got a lot of that debate on the floor, and happy to visit. But I just don't think, in the times that we're in right now, that this is a necessary expense. And I think we need to look at rolling this back. I think we need to look at cheaper ways of doing this. And I also think that this is appropriate for this meeting, as we receive these reports, to ask questions and to make assertions on our opinions on these projects and a path forward on those projects. So happy to continue to partner with you on that. We've had a long conversation on a lot of these capital issues, but I just don't think that this is a necessary expense, and I think we need to look at rolling this back. I mean, certainly the appropriation stands, and that's fine, but I don't think that this needs to take the full expense by any stretch of the imagination.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I think you've been heard.
Yeah, well,
Mr.
Mr.
Treasurer.
Chairman, I do think I don't start every one of my sentences with "I don't think," because if you do that, you really don't have the context in which you can make decisions. And that's what we got to get to the context in education where everyone is on the same page. And I believe at that point in time, Mr. Chairman, that rhetoric without any basis would be perhaps diminished a little bit, and we can actually deal with the facts as presented by the engineering firm that has been hired to represent us in the state in this issue.
Thank you. Let's proceed. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Or Mr. Webb, I think you're on. Sorry, I lost track there.
Mr. Chairman, page 109, item 4A, agency major maintenance project summaries. In the first 2 quarters of FY25, the State Construction Department has expensed $18.7 million in major maintenance funds. This is doubled what we expensed last year in the first 2 quarters, the last FY. Summary of the state agency projects, contracts, and expenses completed are currently in progress from March 20th of 2023 through March 20th, 2025 is attached. Those are pages 110 through 117 are the agencies. If you have any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none.
And then 118 through 132 is community colleges.
Any questions on community colleges?
Continuing, Mr. Chairman, item 4B is Department of Corrections. I have Director Shannon, Mr. Pacheco and Mr. Keys here from the Department of Corrections. Are there any questions?
Are there questions? Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Webb, if you can just share again what was passed, not through a CapCon bill, but separately for DOC, just for public information.
In the 2025 session, there was Senate File, on Senate File 169, there was $18 million granted from the state penitentiary account to the Department of Corrections for security upgrades.
Thank you.
Director Shannon here? Oh, I just, any thoughts on what you're doing there? Is there any question that you need to bring to our attention?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Dan Shannon with the Department of Corrections. Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that I was to disclose those during an executive session today due to security reasons, if I'm permitted to do so.
That'd be fine.
Thank you.
That'd be fine. Thank you. Thank you, Director. Mr. Webb.
Mr. Chairman, item 4C is Wyoming State Parks. We have Director Glenn and Mr. Denise. If there's any questions.
Director Glenn, anything you'd like to bring to our attention? I have one question as far as summer campgrounds and so on.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Dave Glenn, Director of State Parks and Cultural Resources, and with me is Denise, our Head of Construction Engineering for the agency.
Very good. So, Director and last year was a pretty busy year for our camping facilities and so on. Some of those were close to being impaired by wildfire. I just was curious on the update of if there's any concerns we have going into the summer.
Mr. Chairman, Governor, members of the commission, good morning. Denise, Construction Engineering Manager for State Parks. Our agency takes pride in working with local authorities to make sure we are prepared for those instances. I think we last year reflected on our ability to communicate with them. We don't anticipate any major impacts this year to our camping season. I think we should be good to go.
Mr. Chairman, one thing I would add too is we put a lot of energy into getting a lot of our staff red card training to be certified. We've actually parked a couple of fire rigs at our parks and have them available for others to use as well as our staff as well.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Treasurer?
Just real quick. I know that a year or so ago, there was a lot of discussion about the Hot Springs Park up in Termop, and I'm just wondering what I guess it's out for an RFP now. So how's that going to work? I guess the folks that used to run it, are they still going to run it, or is this just wide open right now?
Mr. Chairman, Treasurer Meyer, that RFP was rewarded last fall. And it was essentially for two areas of concessions at the park that were on a month-to-month agreement. That was based on some legislation that was passed in 2019 that said if it's a month-to-month agreement, it needs to go out to RFP. That is currently under litigation. I can't speak about the litigation, but one of those concessionaires is closed at the time. The other one is still open. The park is open for business. And until that is settled, we're not allowed to award that RFP.
I see. Okay. All right. Thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Webb.
Mr. Chairman, continuing on, 4D is military department. And I don't know if Mr. Shope is on or not. If there's any questions.
Mr. Shope on?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm here.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Shope? Mr. Shope, are there any updates that you want to bring to our attention?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there is. On page 150, paragraph 6A, which is our enclave here in Cheyenne, power generation and geothermal microgrid. We were just informed in the last 2 weeks that we will be receiving $70 million for this project on 1 October of this year. And so we currently have this appropriation of 51 million. And so we'll need to be increasing that. Historically, with smaller amounts, we've done that through the B11 process, but since this is such a large amount, I don't know what your guidance is. Probably because of the construction process, we could wait until next session and run it back through the legislature, but I have to start designs on 1 October.
All right, Mr. Shope, Mr. Webb, do you foresee an opportunity for a conversation on that to kind of think about a way forward? It does feel to me it's budgetary in nature.
Mr. Chairman, we will look at this in the facility planning and get back with you on that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shope. Any further questions?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, continuing on, item 4E is the University of Wyoming Capital Facilities Report.
There's Mr.
Mr.
Mai.
Mai is in the audience if there's any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Mai? Mr. Treasurer,
Mr.
please
Chairman.
come on up, Bill.
The disposition of the FMRs, I'm just, I didn't track that all the way through the process this year. Just wondering if you still have them or not.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Treasurer Meyer, we do still have FMRs. It's statutory allocated, and I'll give you some specifics if you want them, if that's okay. Bear with me just a moment, please. Mr. Chairman, the university receives a total of $21.365 million annually from FMRs. And if you remember, 8 million of that was part of the debt service discussion that took place several years ago around housing. So it used to be 13.375, I think was the number, or 365, I was wrong, 13.365. And then $8 million was reallocated out of the amount over $200 million that would have normally been split the prior statutory way. That $8 million was substituted in lieu of block grant. So it wasn't a new net $8 million. It was a net zero.
Just change the funding from FMRs from something else.
Mr. Chairman, it did. Basically what it did was it reduced the general fund money in the block grant and added FMR money. And I think that I don't want to speak for the folks that there may be some people here who can speak to this better than I. But I think the thinking was that it changed that color of money in such a way that it would potentially reduce the debt the interest cost on the debt, because there was a double backing of
That's what I remember. You were using it to actually buy down the increase in credit rating, so you had less of a debt service. And so right now you got 13 million more or less under the cap and 8 million over the cap.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mai, have there been any issues that have occurred with the aquatic center in regards to diving facilities? Has that been part of the plan, or, just curious that?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm not really sure what the issues would have been, but I can explain to you what the aquatic center is, if that would help.
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Superintendent.
It's been my understanding that perhaps there's been some issues with the facility being able to have competition diving versus swimming, and if that was perhaps part of the plan from the get-go.
Mr. Chairman, it actually was, and that if you make it over to Laramie in the anytime in the near future, you're going to see that building coming out of the ground right now, and it is massive, really big building. And part of the reason it's so big is there is a separate diving well from the competition pool, so that those competitions can be held simultaneously, which is something that frankly hasn't existed in Wyoming, until this thing is completed. So you have that separate diving well, you have a 5-meter platform and the springboard competition that goes along with that. And then you have a 50-meter pool. And I think if you pay attention to some of the trustee discussions, you'll hear kind of a continuing discussion about ensuring that this is a 50-meter pool. And let me assure you, it is a 50-meter pool. Not only that, it is a 50-meter pool that accommodates a bulkhead. So with the bulkhead in the water, it's 50 meters from that bulkhead, and you can move that thing to divvy it up into 2 separate competition areas.
Mr. Mai, I think the superintendent and I are sort of worried about the same thing. Are you confident that the diving facility can meet all the specifications?
Mr. Chairman, yes. It was actually a point of discussion for quite a while as we went through the design process. I will tell you the wish list on that aquatic center was to have a 10-meter platform. And if you can imagine going from a 5 to a 10, what that does to building mass and all of that. Ultimately, the discussions with the swimming and diving team and coaches and so forth, and to meet the NCAA competition standards, it was decided that 10-meter was it was a nice to have, but not a necessary to have. And so we went with the 5. I think, I don't want to speak for Dave Denniston. I suspect if you talk to him, you will get the same responses that I get from him. And he's just extremely grateful for this facility coming up. He does not mention any loss of a 10-meter platform.
So we'll be able to hold competitions and all of that.
Mr. Chairman, it will at the highest levels.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not even sure we have competitors in that height. So.
Well, you're already pretty high altitude anyway. Very good. Any further questions? It would seem, Mr. Mai, it would be nice to know how is the West Side stand proceeding?
Mr. Chairman, the West stands are proceeding mostly on schedule. They've had a couple of setbacks. It won't affect opening day or being ready for the first game or anything. If you remember, the substantial completion on that project is actually not until after the football season is over. So there's a few, punch list items and a few items that have to wait until the end of the season to be fully complete, but it will be complete shortly after this year's football season.
Very good. Thanks.
Coming along nicely. And again, anybody that wants to come see any of these facilities, we would be very happy to take you through them.
Thanks. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, continuing on with University of Wyoming, 4F, page 158, is the 25-26 major maintenance summary report. If there are any questions.
Mr. Mai, the only question I have, and I was kind of trying to look through this, I don't believe it's on this list anywhere, just the BSL 3. And it's functioning now. Everything is going according to plan.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that lab has been certified and has been operating according to plan. It's a complex operation, and actually I have Mike Samp here, who is my director of operations, and he deals with all things BSL 3 and frankly all things University of Wyoming building maintenance wise. But they do have a pretty routine maintenance schedule, and they also have sort of those one-off items. I know one of the big issues out at BSL 3, of course, is that incinerator complex out there, and it's critical to keep that thing functioning. And so I know we do a lot of inspection and sort of keeping up with making sure that refractory and everything in there is current and in good shape. So.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that reference number 10.1 was planned animal science, molecular biology. I did not know if that was related to the BSL 3 or if that was somewhere else in the.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's actually that animal science, molecular biology building that's pretty much straight north of the Arena Auditorium, separate building.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Webb.
Mr. Chairman, now we move to item 5, Department of Administration and Information update for general services and leasing report. I invite Director Bach and Administrator Coleman.
Dr. Bach.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the SBC. We're here for our update, and I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, who has all the information that you'll need.
Mr. Coleman.
Mr. Chairman, looking through our written update, I didn't know if there would be any questions on that specifically. Been very busy for us since the last meeting, and we're very happy to say we've been able to accomplish a lot of items, several new leases. We're on track to have all of our leases renewed on time. Also, as you'll find towards the back of our update, we've been very productive in a lot of major maintenance projects, which has been great, and a lot of other trades work, busy around the area. The lease for the Casper Helibase was executed recently. There is also in leasing news, the Department of Family Services office is they're joining to the Cheyenne Airport. As you all know, the loan was approved, and we are working through SLIB for the funding for construction to the airport. And then we have working with the airport on finalizing the lease amendment to make sure that can be, the lease will encompass those new construction costs to be paid back over time, over 10 years. The DEQ building came online as a state property. We closed on it at the end of last year, right around the turn of the year. We now have our custodians are in place, so we are maintaining it. We're no longer under a contract with the contractor. We used the contract to kind of bridge that timing while we were able to get our staffing in place and get our equipment ordered. So we are in that building now, and I think it's going very well with the, I went and took a look at it yesterday, and it's looking or I guess 2 days ago. Anyway, it's looking very nice and I think it's going well there. We did not receive an additional staff or funding because the budget did not go through to add the custodians and funding that we believe we need for the department, for the DEQ building as well as for the Riverton office building operations. But we're working through that to make sure we're still meeting our obligations, and we've moved staff around. So we might be a little shorter than we'd like in some places, but making sure that we can meet what we need to do in DEQ and maintain that properly, as well as we're continuing to contract for the operations at Riverton and are working to make sure that we can keep operating that building the way it needs to be done. We're continuing to work on several different real estate matters. You know, as things come up, we work on trying to address those. We had one item that I don't really want to discuss that outside of an executive session sort of thing that we did go and investigate. It didn't turn out, it didn't work out, but we ended up, you know, we put the time in to make sure that we were advised, and if it was an appropriate thing to act on within the short time that it was open, we did our best to try and get up to speed on that. The one item I wanted to give some kind of a update on that I didn't have anything really ready for the written update was that there was shortly after the last SBC meeting, I think it was the week after, we had a water line break up in the Midwest building up in Casper. This is one of the two old Department of or Workforce Services offices that we were trying to sell. And it was a water line. It was not a frozen, it was a very cold week, but it was not a frozen pipe. It was actually a joint on the hot water system that broke. So we got quickly in there with plumbers, fixed it. We had to bring in some remediation. We also made sure to fix some other ones that might have been on their way. Once we got in here to investigate, we made sure to fix other ones so that they did not break. We also had to do some work on the controls, basically just to make sure that everything is still functional for keeping that building heated as well as the fire system. We're not making upgrades to it to try and, you know, improve the building overly. We just needed to make sure that everything can keep running while we work on disposing of the property. We had a contractor in there that does remediation to remove drywall, flooring, things that needed to be done to prevent mold and to make sure everything got cleaned up from any other issues on the building. And we've now also been working, we have a real estate agent hired and under contract that we've talked with about what, you know, what effects that might have on selling the property. It was pretty positive, our conversations. A lot of the, I think, future uses of that building would require a lot of renovation, which is one of the reasons the state did not pursue renovating that and went with the Thyra Thompson building instead. So actually some of that removal is not necessarily impairing anyone else that's probably going to buy it. It's probably going to end up doing a lot of renovations that they would needed to have done if we hadn't had some of these things dealt with for this remediation on this water break. But I wanted to give you an update on that and let you know that that had occurred. We think we've got all the cleanup done, and now we're moving forward on just trying to move forward with the property. Also, so as far as the cost of the cleanups, we were able to work through that with the risk management division or the risk management program within general services. So that is not money that's coming out of our major maintenance or any other funding source. So that is something that was kind of a standard thing for a property damage claim like this.
Oh, yeah, Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Mr. Kuma, can I get just a little more clarification on the Midwest property? I was just sitting here remembering the task force back in 2011 when we got started on all that. Do I understand that we still have people in that building? And maybe you could project a little bit for us. What do you anticipate is going to be the end result? I thought you were indicating that we're probably going to have to tear that building down. Is that where it looks like, or can you kind of just update me on that facility?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Landon, we do not have anyone in that building. Was moved out, Workforce Services moved out for the Thyra Thompson building. We have not moved anyone else in our evaluations. So part of the delay on the process has been working with the Federal Department of Labor. They have specific requirements for a building that was purchased with federal labor money. That has caused some delays as far as we now have the 2 appraisals we needed. We were able to get a approved letter from the Department of Labor authorizing us to move forward with selling the properties. I think we had to say that we don't have a, additional use for it, that they need to just be disposed of for the state. We are not planning on trying to demolish those. We're trying to work on just selling those. And then that funding will hopefully pay back for the costs of kind of the sale piece of maintaining this long to get it sold. And then also the additional money goes back into basically replacing new federal dollars that are part of the Federal Department of Labor's grant to workforce services to do, I think it's the unemployment program. So it goes back into funding services in Wyoming through Department of Workforce Services.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, I forgot about that federal piece. So,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Treasurer.
Yeah. Just going on to, I guess, a major maintenance construction update.
Actually, Mr. Treasurer, if you'll give me a privilege here just for a quick
Absolutely. Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to take us off the momentum. There are a lot of moving pieces federally at this point. Are we thinking about whether there are opportunities there, whether, as I say, federal issues are in lots of different directions. One is maybe properties come available, and the second is maybe more responsibilities come to the state. And have we kind of started thinking about what those two things might look like? I know you don't have an answer. I guess I'm just sort of thinking about how we go about that.
Mr. Chairman, we, try to keep abreast of what is changing, and particularly in kind of the General Services Administration changes. But the first piece was to identify if there were any lease effects on us. As I think you're aware, we have a lease with the General Services Administration for the State Trails building that we acquired 2 years ago up in Lander. That was not canceled, as our understanding at this moment. But yes, we know things are moving fast, and we're trying to stay abreast of what those changes are to see what opportunities we might have. I believe there was some talk of some disposal of property up in Casper, I think, and I don't know. I think that there has been, I believe, some availability of the old federal office building here in Cheyenne, which I think comes with quite a lot of, I don't know if deferred maintenance is the accurate term for it, but there's, I think, a lot of reasons why General Services was looking to dispose of that property. Casper, I think, is a new one, and I don't know if that's been formally approved or not. I think it was on a list I saw, and then I heard it was not on a list, but we are keeping our ears out for those kind of opportunities.
Okay, and I guess the other one is just whatever happens with FEMA, whether we're going to have more responsibility, more capacity, we're going to have to deliver in form of here's a block grant, do what you will state. So and all of that is a little bit unclear at this point, but I think it probably behooves us to be thinking ahead. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer, for your forbearance.
Just looking at that 5A General Services update by A&I, and the major maintenance and construction update, it seems like this isn't maybe quite the detail that our construction department does, because they'll go through and they got the budget and they got how much has been expended and what's left in to be expended, and maybe the percentage of completion of the project. And the reason I bring that up is because I recall a couple of years ago hearing this line at the Idleman, that there are areas of the Idleman roof line that the wood is rotted and has created an opening that animals have been used to getting into the attic. And I think that's the same narrative that we had a year or two ago. And so I'm just wondering if you could in the future maybe look at what the construction department has done, and for each one of their projects, that's find out whether there's funds obligated to do it, find out what the completion is. So we actually just don't, retread the narratives on these things. So we have an idea about the the progress or lack of progress that has happened, because I would think that you've probably at least put up, $10 worth of hail screen to keep the animals out of the roof by now, but I don't know. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mr. Coleman. Any
Thank you, Mr.
response?
Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. For your point, we will take a look at that, and we have fixed the known access points for squirrels, or I think it's really only been squirrels. But, yeah, they seem to be the daring acrobats that want to go hang up in the attic. But yeah, we have fixed those, and the long-term fix is still what we need to do as far as some work to some preservation renovations on the outside, but we are making sure to at least keep our systems on the inside of the building. One of the issues that we have up there is that we've got some HVAC units up in the crawl spaces, and there's actually multiple crawl spaces up in the attic piece. There's a lot of little eaves that have their own door areas. So whenever we have any issues with this, we go through and inspect those to make sure they're not, chewing on wires or anything like that. But
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a little more specificity so we understand, and if it says update, I know these say it's all encompassing, ongoing and everything else and updates, but maybe just put those in 3 different categories. It's ongoing or updated, or just so we actually know what's going on, so we don't have to waste our time with questioning narratives that have been there for a few years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.
I had one additional item, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
On kind of a space management side of things, we have been working on some different options, different scenarios for moving some agencies into space on the Department of Education's floor. Superintendent Dagenfelder was very gracious in identifying some space on her floor that could be used for other agencies. We went and have toured that with her staff, and we're very excited about that opportunity. So we're putting together the list of what agencies we think would be most compatible, and we'll be speaking with you about some of those opportunities. We are also looking at it in conjunction with opportunities for who to move into the old houses that we recently acquired this last year. We believe we know enough about now what we would need to do to put into those houses to make them usable for agencies. And so now we're evaluating which agencies would work best, and then we can identify the process to again make the buildings ready to fit those agencies and what the timeline can be for that. But we are concentrating on making sure we can make use of that space in the Hirschler.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add, Superintendent Degenfelter will be working with you on who we put in there too. So I know that there's a couple similar minded agencies that we hope to be able to get in there, or something associated with education or something like that. But you will definitely have an input on that before they go in that area.
Thank you, Director. All right. Further questions? If there are none, we can move on. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, moving along to item 6, capital interpretive exhibits and wayfinding subcommittee update. You'll find that the narrative remains the same from previous reports, including the link. This is page 199 to the legislature's website, where the work of the subcommittee is documented in detail. I also, before I request an update or from the co-chairmen who are both here with us, want to, just emphatically extend our gratitude for the work that they do, other duties as assigned, and the level of which they've become subject matter experts in things they never probably would have dreamed of. It really, their work cannot be understated, and I'd be kind of curious how much money they've saved us just in their billable hours.
Madam Auditor.
Mr. Chairman, my billing rate's real low, so that's okay. Mr. Chairman, I don't have a whole lot to add. This project, there's always a lot of work going on underneath, but it sort of ebbs and flows in terms of visual changes you might have seen. Of course, one of the biggest changes was all of the signage that went up in the past 6 months tried to get all of that in before the session. And then the artwork in these public meeting rooms is a more recent addition. We are now more in a less publicly visible stage where we are in the review process for a lot of the digital activations. One of those is the Portraits of History display that will be in the vault near your office. The other one is the Constitution display, which has been, I think a feature point of this project from the get-go. And then we are in not preliminary, but more in-depth review of the civics lab that will be in that room outside of this area. So all of those reviews I think everybody on SBC is in file stage and so has access to all of those documents and reviews that we are currently working on and is able to put input into those. So we have a robust we didn't have a whole lot of meetings during the legislature, and we did have a small gap where we didn't have any legislative members appointed. So there was a little bit of a lapse there. But those have been reappointed. So we are back on our busy meeting schedule for the next 4 to 5 months. And perhaps my illustrious co-chair might have something to add.
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And my apologies a few minutes ago for not acknowledging the work of that committee. And I'm glad we have an opportunity to do that right here. It's really been an honor to serve with the co-chairman. And I was really happy that we were able to reappoint Representative Sherwood and Representative Nicholas. Been a pleasure to work with them on this project. So on we go, but there is quite a little bit of work to be finished up, outlined very well by the co-chairman. And as we come back to the SBC, I will underline that we will provide any piece of detail on anything that we work on at any time somebody so inquires. And so we'll continue. It's quite a working committee, and our ex officio members, I can't say enough about all of those who serve on that subcommittee, and really appreciate the work they do. And I want to thank Ms. Norwood for all the work she does to coordinate with Ms. Madsen and Ms. Davidson. Anyway, we're onward, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any comment? Mr. Secretary, I see you're back with us. Is there any comment on this?
No, I've been on. I guess I was just going to ask what we're at on total expense, total amount spent.
Mr. Chairman, the contract amount hasn't changed in quite a while. The SBC secretary may have an actual dollars out the door figure.
Mr. Chairman, I do not have that handy, but I could sure follow up via email shortly after this meeting.
Thank you. Great. All right.
Sorry, just a moment. Item 7 is a review of working group functions and planning for the upcoming year. Perhaps it would be helpful for our new members, and just as a refresher from our conversation in 2023, to revisit the conversation we had when these working groups were created in April of 2019, the purpose of such, to discuss and point out how helpful the meetings with the working groups are to move along the work of the SBC, to give our legislative liaisons more intimate knowledge of the topics that are considered, and for the SBC members to be able to consider legislative points of view and so on. Governor Gordon, I don't know if you mind if I put you on the spot there.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. one of the things that we did to make the role of a liaison more valuable on this committee was to break out into subcommittees, master plan, major maintenance, construction, leasing, space allocation, and rules to allow for the legislature to take a more, I guess, formative role in the recommendations that this commission makes. I think each of these has a distinct set of responsibilities, and they're chaired jointly by members of this commission. But again, and I'm familiar with the master plan, but I suspect others have had good representation from members of the legislature here. This is a joint project, and it feels important to be able to allow for conversation to take place. I can go through the various committees, but I think they're all available online. I'd be happy to let others speak to it. Auditor, you and I work on the master plan, which talks about kind of the capital and areas around it, things that we're looking at. And we have work underway there. Secretary Gray, you and Treasurer Meyer work on the major maintenance. You have Senator Driscoll's, Representative Nicholas on that. Anything you'd like to mention on that?
Not really. I mean, we've been going through, Mr. Chairman, and taking testimony from agencies regarding their major maintenance requests. I've always been a little bit cryptic on, other than looking at the major maintenance request that is forwarded to the board, what exactly the governor's intent is on that. So we've sort of taken it to providing oversight of the agencies and going one by one. And then we also look at the recommendation, but that's just once a year. And so that's kind of where we've taken it, and happy to engage in any colloquy with stakeholders, including the governor, on anything that he wants us to look at.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it is the opportunity to kind of look at maintenance trends and things that are emerging, ways to look at if there are improvements that can be made, that sort of thing. On the construction side, Superintendent Degenfelder, you and Secretary Gray both deal with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an interesting one. Just, I mean, looking at this past year, we, of course, did a lot of due diligence, spoke to every agency with requests, really went through with fine-tooth comb of how we wanted to prioritize, those projects. As we know, the legislature, tends to act on their accord with those projects. And so, it's one of those things where it's an interesting one of our role and how valuable that information is, to the legislature. But we'll continue on with that effort.
And Representative Angelos, I know you're serving on that committee. I don't know if you've had a meeting yet. You haven't, so hopefully that can be of value. Any questions you have?
No, I don't have any questions. Just excited to take part and learn. It's an education for me as well, so.
Okay, well, great. And you also serve on the leasing and space allocation. That's chaired by Treasurer Meyer and Auditor Racinas. Treasurer.
I guess what we try to do is, for myself, is kind of look at the trends that's going on with leasing in the different areas around the state and try to put that in context as to whether or not, is leasing still the most efficient, effective way in different areas, or compare that with ownership. And so we just kind of, look at those different questions that we have to have asked and answered. And for the most part, I think that you can see that the leasing is continuing to probably go up a little bit because within the lease, they have all the maintenance and all of those ownership costs. And so, I think really trying to get our arms around what's going on in maintenance and our costs, what's going on in the other area, and then just look and see whether or not we're still trying to get the most, I guess, efficient and effective space out there for the state employees to do their job.
Yeah, great. And I imagine you probably haven't had time for a meeting yet either.
No, I think Suzanne's going to get one scheduled here directly. I can't recall what month or date, but it's within probably the next couple of months.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Treasurer, my suggestion for contemplation for the chairman of that working group would be to potentially attend the next task force meeting for the Riverton office building, which will be held on site there for a walkthrough of the building as it is, and to evaluate some of the design work and the planning that's gone into it, just to bring you along in that planning phase, and then as requested by the members.
Yeah.
I believe it's going to be in April, week after next, but nothing's been noticed yet. So we will, and if not then, maybe a later task force meeting.
Get that out so we can see how people's calendars match up.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Terrific. And of course, the last committee, which I think we'll probably have some work to do today, is the Rules Committee. And I think Auditor Racinas and Superintendent Degenfelder, I just want to thank you for your work on this.
Mr.
Auditor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you to the superintendent as well. We've had a couple of meetings so far, and I think our goal today is, well, let me back up. We directed the department in conjunction with the AG's office to draft rules reflecting the new law that will go into effect on July 1st. And there's been a couple updates to those rules. So the ones we are considering were sent out by the secretary at 8:29 this morning, and then we have paper copies here in person. I'll have them walk through these. By and large, the changes between the couple versions in the last day or two have been some cleanup and reorganization. The substantive goal is the same. And I think we would like to be able to go ahead and get these activated for public comment today, knowing that there may be a little bit of housekeeping or cleanup, grammatical stuff on these, but again, recognizing that our substantive goal is some relatively straightforward, and we think, anyway, that's what we're hoping. Superintendent, she may have anything to add.
Mr. Chairman.
Madam.
Thank you. I might just add, I really appreciate the work of the AG's office to get this done quickly. I think our intent, we wanted to make sure to bring action to this board meeting, knowing that we don't meet again for a while. And so recognizing that there might need to be some minor tweaks to this, but I think largely the intent is to just mirror the law that was passed during session. And so the thought too of getting this out, hopefully to try to avoid doing emergency rules and get these in time for that statute to come into effect. But perhaps they may still necessitate some emergency rules depending on the timing of how we can get these through.
Thank you, Superintendent. Senator Landon, you also serve on this committee. Is there any other color you'd like to add?
Mr. Chairman, I do not have anything. Appreciate the work of my colleagues on the subcommittee. I was a little late to the party on this one, so they did work without me, and I think they did a great job. So.
Very good. So Madam Auditor, I think we've just been passed out the draft. What is your suggestion here?
Mr. Chairman, I would maybe have the secretary walk through these with us and, if we have any questions, go from there.
Great, thank you. Madam Secretary, recognizing these are draft.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And then also want to offer my thanks and understanding and graciousness is also to Senator Landon. It was very last minute that he was notified that we were going to come together. Another amazing thing about our working groups is they're very nimble.
Well, and quite frankly, that was the intent, to be able to be able to meet needs as they came up.
Right, exactly. And so conforming these, the rules that became effective on March 19th, going through that process did allow us to dive deep and get our familiarity where it needs to be with the rules and how they're adopted and so on. So that process in itself was very helpful. And then with the House Bill 172, House Enrolled Act 24, that becomes effective July 21st, it doesn't really become an effect of us having to repeal certain things there. Or they are repealed by replacing language. So for example, where we are allowing lawful carry in the capital and capital extension right now, that then becomes in public buildings. And so it's pretty straightforward. And so I don't have page numbers here, but chapter 1 in this new draft includes a definition of the capital extension. No, that's the old one. So very sorry. Give me just a moment, please. Mr. Chairman, we are doing just 2 other quick cleanups as part of this. One is to provide further definition of dangerous weapons in regard to pocket knives, to conform it with more uniform standards across the nation. We add a definition of open carry. We add a definition of public-owned building. In chapter 4, page 4-2.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary.
So I have open the rules that Suzanne sent. I mean, I'm a little unclear where we are. I mean, if we could just try to announce it each time, because
Mr. Chairman,
help.
I would be happy to take a step back and review it a little bit differently.
Yeah, if we could start over, I'd appreciate it, because I'm not seeing these changes to open carry and the definition. Maybe I guess the open carry one is on page 5. So that's where the changes start, is page 5.
Mr. Chairman, the first change begins on page 1-2. And it's highlighted where we conform a pocket length with a blade length of no longer than 3 inches.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary.
That's not underlined. So in this, the underline is what's being added there. So in what was sent here last night, that's why.
Mr. Chairman,
draft.
Secretary, I certainly apologize and understand that your travel impacts the materials that you have in front of you. As was mentioned just a minute ago, we had some revisions happen overnight. And so a new version was provided by email and is posted on the State Building Commission's website as of 8/29.
Mr. Secretary, Section 4N now adds in the last sentence after when open, it adds or 3 inches in blade length and then continues are not considered a dangerous weapon.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at version 5 now, so we're good.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, my apologies, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. The next additions to the definitions are on page 1-4. Adding BB, open carry, meaning the carrying of a firearm in a manner where the firearm is full or partially visible to others. For purposes of these rules, partially visible includes, but is not limited to, firearms in holsters, scabbards, or slings.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple questions here.
Sure, Mr. Secretary.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm just not understanding why with the statute and passing, why we need to define open carry other than the statutory provision defining open carry. I mean, why aren't we just cross-referencing the statute here? And you know, I mean, I understand we have an existing rule, but remember, this rule was passed before the statute passed. And so now I think, and you see it on concealed, I mean, you cross-reference the statute on concealed. Why aren't we cross-referencing the statute on open?
Madam Secretary, and I would note that these are drafts, so they are a work in progress, so.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Secretary Gray, absolutely. We are certainly open to suggestions. However, in the promulgation of rules, definitions are helpful to clarify things that may be allowed or may not be allowed. I don't believe it's up for discussion perhaps of whether open carry is part of the constitutional carry that's considered in these rules. It was my understanding, I could be wrong, that we were working towards adapting rules for concealed carry. And so clarifying open carry is allowed by peace officers, security personnel is helpful.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have another one too.
Is that all
Mr.
on this provision? If
Yes,
not,
I want to go back to 1-2.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to understand here what the legislative history is on this. And when I say legislative history, I mean the rulemaking history. So I guess it's more legislative within the context of an executive board that is taking action. Why do we need to bring this in? Did Division O ask for this? Like, what's the impetus for this bring in this sort of unrelated, other topic?
Madam Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, Secretary Gray, in review of rules and in consideration of the stakeholders that we discuss, operation of facilities and so on, it was pointed out that conforming this to something similar to other educational facilities, federal facilities, would be a good idea. It certainly does not have to move forward if the board would recommend removing it.
And Mr. Secretary, it would seem to me that particular provision would allow for carrying a pocket knife. I mean, it carries for a pocket knife, but it allows for a short bladed knife. There may be good reason for that, may not. So.
Well, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think I understand the intent. I I just want to understand on each of the unrelated things we're bringing in, what the reason is.
Mr. Chairman, Secretary, that came from staff, a staff recommendation.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
back to 1-4. I think you've highlighted provision HH.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, provision HH is inserted to provide a definition for public-owned building. Means any public building that is owned by the state of Wyoming, including facilities occupied by the legislature and judiciary, to the extent that management council or judicial council has concurred per Wyoming statute 9-5-106D, Romanet I through II. Public-owned building does not include buildings that the state leases under General Services Leasing Authority, spaces in public-owned buildings which are subject to a lease to a private party, and spaces identified under 6-8-104T or spaces identified under 6-8-105D, Romanet IV through VI.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on this one.
Sure, Mr. Secretary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And certainly, you know, going back to 2017 when we first started on this issue, I mean, and remember we were in the Jonah building, and so the predicate for the governor's veto, which candidly was a little bit false in my opinion, because it provided this sort of exemption, if you will, was, you know, the understanding has always been that the lease space is not necessarily subject to the act. And that's always been part of the legislative history and part of each of the versions of the bills. But I don't think that means that ANI shouldn't be trying to put into our leases a provision allowing this. And I think that's contemplated a little bit later when it expressly says that, you know, that if it is allowed in a lease space, then people can carry. But I think we also need a provision saying that the agency will endeavor to negotiate leases that allow it. And so I want to get a little bit, I'm not sure this is the place for it. It probably would come a little later, but I think someplace we need to put, I think it would probably come in chapter 6, I think, but we need to put somewhere that the agency is going to endeavor and include that as part of their negotiation, that they're going to try to add this provision in future negotiations.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on.
Mr. Chairman, Chapter 4, Section 5, page 4-2. Add paragraph H, nothing contained herein shall be construed to allow the carrying of a weapon, open or concealed, into facilities where the carrying of firearms is otherwise prohibited by law or contract. These rules apply to public buildings that are held subject to lease to the extent that the lessor agrees to allow the carrying of concealed firearms in that public building. To the extent that carrying a weapon in certain public buildings or in some area of public buildings is or may be prohibited by law, the entry to said facilities or areas within those facilities shall be clearly marked.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, not highlighted, but also on page 4-3, section 6, it adds information regarding the judiciary's use in a public-owned building, including but not limited to the Capitol building or Capitol extension. Any questions? Mr. Chairman, Chapter 6, page 6-1, paragraph D. To the extent that use of a public property outside a public building does not otherwise require a permit, such as protesting on public sidewalks or streets, exceeds the available space, the walkway to the Capitol building, up to but not past the seal of the state of Wyoming, may also be used without a permit, provided that such use does not obstruct access to the Capitol building, constitute a breach of peace, and interfere with the permitted use of the same area. Mr. Chairman, this item and these conditions came as a recommendation from staff in response to permits that aren't requested by organizations that are more organic or grassroots in nature, that we want to be able to provide the safety for participants so that they aren't in the street impeding traffic or putting those that are assembling peacefully at risk. And so it's just to clarify that and provide guidelines and clarity for Division O and others that take care of our state buildings.
Very good.
Yeah, I have a couple questions on that one.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary.
So what is the practice now? Is the practice, what is the practice now, and what is this trying to fix?
Mr. Chairman, in the past couple of, Mr. Secretary, in the past few years, there have been a few peaceful protests that have occurred where there isn't a clear organizer, and they therefore then don't know to reach out to the State Building Commission. If an individual isn't able to be identified through, reconnaissance through security departments that alert the State Building Commission secretary that there may be a protest or an assembly of some kind, we do try to reach out proactively if we're able to identify an organizer or contact information for an organizer, but that doesn't always happen. And so there have been a number in the last year where a group will come and perhaps the sidewalks are icy and there are piles of snow, impeding the actual public sidewalk. And so security staff thought that the safety of the people who are assembling to protest peacefully or to support something peacefully, their safety was paramount to whether or not they actually crossed the line between the public right-of-way, the sidewalk in front of the Capitol, or onto the walkway up to the seal in front of the Capitol. And so to allow that and make that more clear, these have been brought forward as a suggestion to this revision of the rules. And again, it's optional. If we only want to conform the rules to the new legislation, that is certainly possible. These are just recommendations from staff to improve our communication.
Mr. Chairman, I'm still a little bit unclear. I mean, so how would this change current practice?
Madam Auditor.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, I'll take a stab at my understanding of it, and then the other secretary can correct it if I get this wrong. I think essentially Division O are sort of in a tough spot of either violating our rules or making people go out in the street when it's probably not safe. And so I think the intent is to try to strike a balance between those two. What current practice is right now, I think it probably ends up maybe one or the other of those or both, depending on the situation. But I think this is maybe a middle ground as opposed to saying, okay, peaceful grassroots organizers, you have to go stand in the street because you didn't get a permit. Anyway, am I saying that accurately?
Mr. Chairman, Auditor Racinas, absolutely. I agree with the way you summarized that.
Mr. Chairman, so if this passes, then if the snow removal would not allow their congregation in the sidewalk, they would just be dispersed, or, I mean, they would be not permitted to use the sidewalk, and obviously not, and not the street either. They would just be dispersed.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, again, please, Suzanne, correct me if I get this wrong. I think in that situation, this would allow them to move into this defined area. Again, as long as they're conforming to laws and being peaceful, that this rule would allow them to move into this defined area without violating our rules.
Correct, Mr. Chairman, Auditor.
And I-
Yes,
Okay, so right now, Mr. Chairman, right now, if there's some sort of obstruction or something, the way the rules read, they would be forced into the street or potentially dispersed. Then this allows in those situations the demonstration or the congregation to continue. I mean, it's worded a little bit confusing, and I guess yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Auditor, Secretary. Yes, it allows for peaceful protests to continue, whether or not the sidewalks are clear or whether or not the folks that are peacefully assembling outnumber the space available. It's to allow those that are trying to follow SBC rules to allow grace to the public, no matter the topic.
And Madam
Okay.
Secretary, I'd point out, these are drafts, so if there are revisions that can improve the understanding or need not be in the act, those are certainly comments that we can contemplate taking.
Mr. Chairman.
And Madam Superintendent.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think it's pretty simple in here too, of just that, if they are obstructed on the public sidewalks or streets, they're exceeding that space, between that and the seal, they are allowed to gather without a permit. That's as simple as it is, correct, Suzanne?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Norton?
yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I got a couple more questions on that. What is the existing provision that is being interpreted to force them to, or under the current rule, I guess there's this confusion about whether they would be allowed. Where is that in the existing rules?
Mr. Chairman, Secretary, that is in the existing rules immediately preceding the new paragraph, requiring any person or organization not affiliated with the state be required to file an application for a permit.
Where are you?
Right at section 5, application permit on that same page, 6-2.
And Mr. Chairman, where is this provision that, if there's snow or something, or
Mr.
forced into
Chairman,
the street?
Secretary, I apologize for providing a recent example of an event that occurred where the group's safety was deemed to be important, and therefore Division O allowed the group to come onto an area outside of the public sidewalk for the safety of the peacefully assembling group. It's not just related to snow, it's related to how many people attend an event and so on. My apologies for that confusion.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, what are we trying to effectuate here? What's the problem we're trying to address? Because earlier it was that there's a lack of clarity, and now it seems to have, I don't know, it seems that earlier kind of some of the stuff's being retracted. So,
Mr. Chairman.
can you restate that?
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, Ms. Norton, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding here is that there has been confusion for security officials when there's a group that extends a bit off of the public sidewalk, and how much leniency do they have to that group if they don't have a permit? You know, are we gonna, use the stick on them because they haven't gotten a permit, kick them completely out? Or can we have a little bit of wiggle room, recognizing there's a little bit of space between that public sidewalk and where we're requiring permits? So all this does is create in our rule that clarity. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Superintendent, yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do apologize. We do need to backtrack just a little bit to go to page 4.2. I did not highlight paragraph F, as in Frank, that did have some changes. So I will read paragraph F. Except as otherwise provided herein and subject to the restrictions set forth in subsections G and H of this section, no dangerous weapon may be carried in public-owned buildings except those lawfully carried by peace officers, including security personnel, engaging in open carry or concealed carry, and individuals lawfully engaging in permitted carry or constitutional carry in compliance with all other applicable laws and regulations. The remainder of that paragraph remains the same.
Madam Secretary, it's my understanding that kind of implements the new law.
Mr. Chairman, exactly. It implements the new law, and yeah, it implements the new law.
So moving back to, are we on 6.2 then?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we are on 6.2 at the bottom of 6.2. This is a practice that we currently conduct, but sometimes we get pushback when we say, no, you must have insurance. So paragraph 9, any request for a waiver of the ordinary requirement to obtain insurance for the event. Such a request shall contain a concise explanation of the nature of the event, why the applicant believes the insurance requirement would present an undue burden upon them or the event, and demonstrate the steps an applicant has taken to obviate the need for insurance.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to understand a little more on the history from the subcommittee, why the choice was made to try to roll in all this unrelated stuff. I mean, there's a lot of implications here. You know, now we've got 2 on the nature of public meetings, demonstrations, whatever the nature of these meetings are in front of the Capitol. And I really wish we could just do these separately. I mean, I'm fine having this discussion, but, this insurance issue has been one that has been brought to my attention on different things. And my understanding is the practice has been to generally waive this requirement.
That's not accurate.
When it's unreasonable. And so I don't know if that's changed. Obviously, we got a new director here, in 2024. I think that my conversations were always with the previous one in relation to this insurance waiver. And I'm just getting really nervous, we're adding a lot of different stuff on different topics. And the original effectuation of this, which was coming late anyway, was to try to respond to the act. And now we're doing things on public demonstrations, and it's I'm getting a little nervous about it, and I want to understand a little more on the implications of it.
Mr. Chairman, Secretary, my apologies. I would like to, take any focus on this conversation off of the working group. They are very nimble. We work really hard to comply with all statutes regarding the Procedural Act 16-3-101 and all of our state building commission statutes that require promulgation of rules and the department's responsibility to perform to those rules. And so it's staff that's asking for these changes. If we simply want to focus on rules that adapt to the current law, that certainly makes sense. I would also say that the statute that we're responding to requests that the beginning of work on the rules begin no later than 30 days after July 1st. So we are in by no means late, but our very nimble working group wanted to bring this forward at this meeting so we could move that conversation forward to potentially move forward a draft of rules with cleanup recommended today to the notification and public comment period, which could begin sooner than April 16th and extend to June 2nd, which then, if we were able to schedule a special meeting the first or second week of June, with those notifications and the days that are required in this process, we could potentially have rules in effect by July 19th, which is short of the deadline to even begin promulgating rules. So we are not behind. We are happy to just consider implementing the law, but the department wants to meet the rules, the statutes that every legislature brings before us. And while the rule making process is in progress, it makes sense to incorporate simple changes.
And Madam Secretary, I'll recognize you in a second, Madam Auditor, but I know that rulemaking takes time. And we certainly want to make sure that these drafts are fully exercised. So it gives people the opportunity to talk about it. If we had two different sets of rules, we just make that process longer, more bureaucratic. And this is perhaps a more efficient way to do that.
Mr. Chairman, that was our intent.
Thank you. Madam Auditor.
Mr. Chairman, for what it's worth, I was planning on I would anticipate a motion to move 1 and 4 together and then chapter 6 separately, because chapter 6 is very different. And I don't really anticipate any need for emergency rules on those issues. So I was always intending to have those be 2 separate actions of this board if we chose to move forward.
Mr.
Chairman.
I'm recognizing Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just kind of request for information into the, I'm not sure what steps would obviate the need for insurance, but I see in later on here is that you asked the state risk manager to you consult with them. So maybe you could consult with the risk manager and ask him what steps would be considered obviating the need for insurance. So if we had an idea of that, I don't think necessarily we'd have to put it in the rules. That would probably clutter them up, but it'd be nice to know if somebody was wanting to get a permit and what steps they would, necessarily try to implement to obviate the need for insurance, just because, I'd be just grasping in thin air for obviation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, again, draft rules, and perhaps they can be improved. That is exactly what we do now, and we have not waived insurance requirements. And what instead we do is we do a little background work to assist permit applications to get quotes for relatively small amounts of money by insurance companies that provide event insurance. We had a small family group that played musical instruments, granted a permit in this room. And he was very familiar, and he actually trained us in oh, these companies provide event insurance and we're happy to provide that. So it's not an obstruction for anyone really to be able to for a small sum of money, be insured to our standards. So we do check with the risk manager. And so far we have not waived based on someone saying they can't get insurance. Instead, when they say they can't get insurance, we help acquaint them with the other, with the insurance providers that can provide the service that they need. So it's documenting.
Mr. Treasurer, follow up?
I guess I still don't know what I would need to obviate, but I guess the burden that they talk about insurance premiums is a threshold that necessarily is a low bar, and it's easier to just pay the piper rather than try to figure out what you can do to make your event safer.
Mr. Chairman, Treasurer, correct.
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, just want to push back a little bit on some of the discussion on insurance. I mean, we have prayer events, citizens that want to pray in front of the Capitol, and you know, this requirement for insurance can become very burdensome when people are simply praying. I mean, and so it is an important thing to discuss. I do want to. I want to tell the auditor I really appreciate what you said earlier about these being moved separately, because I think that is, I didn't know that. That wasn't made clear when they were sent out. And so thank you for that. That decreases my concern on the way the package was brought quite a bit. But I want to understand a little more on the average pricing on these insurance costs. I mean, in my conversations, you know, what are we looking at here? Is it $60 on a lot of these, $100, $200, $300? What are the ranges you've been seeing since you just mentioned that you've been helping in getting some quotes for some of these events?
Mr. Chairman, Secretary, I have not personally shopped, and we do not inquire, and have not been presented with anyone stating that the insurance prices are a barrier to applying for a permit. The only permit I have ever shopped for is when we began permitting the Saturday cruise nights on the east lot across from the Capitol. And when I entered information as if I was going to host that event, which does involve motor vehicles and, you know, Saturday night crowds, the cost was $120.
Okay, and just to be clear, you know, these events are on the spectrum. I mean, a lot of them are prayer events. You know, many times those have been ones that I've been involved in, and so it just it's important that there's some. It's important for us to examine this, but what did you mean earlier? Because I guess I misunderstood that in instances where a waiver is requested, I thought you said that you help them to get quotes, or you help them in obtaining the insurance or setting up that inquiry. I guess in light then of my later question, I misunderstood that. So could you go back to that and explain that a little more?
Mr. Chairman, so if a grassroots group of people would like to have an event on the cruise nights, for example, and if those charities that are raising money during those events are not already a nonprofit with insurance, we have a template email where we provide contact information for insurance companies that provide event insurance. And that's the extent of it. In thinking about waiving these requirements for prayers, and Mr. Chairman, perhaps I should ask permission before I'll provide anecdotal information.
If you want to, I
This
think
is
some of
interesting,
this
though.
can be brought forth in public comment, but anyway, go ahead.
I am traveling to Indianapolis for a friend's spouse's funeral next week, and I am interested in visiting all Capitol buildings. So I went on their social media sites and was shocked to see that they have in their Capitol a satanic permit, or they have demonstrations of what could be construed to be a religious group. And I'm never allowed to grant or not grant a permit based on the purpose or topic by law. And so I wouldn't. But in waiving a permit application for a religious purpose, I would not recommend it based on that discovery.
Mr. Treasurer.
But when you look at this and you look at the change of our society, and you look at special interest groups and other affiliated organizations who actually pay people to disrupt, and protest for all manner of areas, I think that the insurance thing is probably going to become more and more important, and trying to figure out and obviate the circumstances to make our events safer. We haven't had that disruption, necessarily in our state, but, folks, it very well could be coming. I think it's probably happened in Colorado or we know that it's happened on the East and West Coast and every place else. So, when we have the public use of events at our facilities, I think it's important that we do have an understanding that we're starting to live in a different society, and that these things are only going to become more disruptive, and hopefully the insurance premiums will stay reasonable. It's unfortunate that we're living in this society that we have now, and but those are things that I think that we have to understand when we start doing rulemaking authority, and just say that, it's still great to live in Wyoming, but, these other states, what's going on, could get across our border with just a few, I'd say, bad apples paying people to do bad things.
Well, but Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, I have one question on that. I mean, I'm thinking about exemptions. I mean, and this is something that in other states, the court precedents have not been strong on. And that's why, some of the things that you're seeing, just the outrageousness, the woke stuff, and it's part of the problem in our society. But I would certainly hope that will never come to Wyoming. And I don't think we're at that point right now. So I think it would be possible to build, a waiver system that, is not allowing what the secretary, where it went in Illinois. I think satanic stuff is totally different from what we were just talking about. And I think that could be it would be very easily distinguishable. And so under where we're at in Wyoming, and certainly pray we keep it that way. And so I does anybody disagree with me? And if that is there, maybe, I guess that's my question in this section.
And I think, Mr. Secretary, this is commentary, and I think it's something we can take under consideration. I don't think we're trying to draft the rules here today. I think what we're doing is trying to get them out so people can look at them and consider them and make improvements to them, so that we can get them posted, excuse me, before.
Well, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify this is to go out for promulgation. And I think there's just been some confusion in the past when you describe this, because promulgation is a formal part of the rulemaking process. And it's an important point because in statute, or it might be in the rules on rules, you can't make a substantive change off of public comment once you promulgate. In that case, you would have to go back out to public comment if it's substantive, if you had a substantive change at the time of adoption. And so that's why this is a very important discussion and an important act. So it's not just moving forward with a draft. There is things to consider here. And so thank you.
And Mr. Secretary, I don't know if it was the auditors or the superintendent's intent to promulgate rules today. I think you were talking about getting them out for comment. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, promulgating is what sets off the public comment period. And I've noticed this in your description of the rulemaking process, that I think in setting out the process, I want to help you in understanding. There's promulgation, and that's what starts the comment period. And then you have adoption after the comment period. So you have, and then between comment and adoption, it goes to management council and that procedure and statute, which has been amended.
So you're suggesting promulgating these rules today, Mr. Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, I'm unclear. I think they were, because they want to go out to comment. And I believe they want a motion to promulgate, which would set out the public comment process. And promulgation is a formal act in statute. It's the first act. And I guess this waives the permission to proceed, because I guess, you also, the governor's office has this requirement that agencies should request permission to proceed 10 days before doing this. And because it came so late, I assume they just didn't do that. But or it might be in the AG handbook on rules on that. But I believe that's what they're trying to do. Otherwise, they can't go out to comment, Mr. Chairman. They have to promulgate to go out to comment.
Madam Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, similar to, there are a couple, ways we could proceed, come back with a special meeting to consider commentary made today on how we should move forward among the commission itself. Or we could perhaps do what we did last year, and we did an informal comment period.
That is what I thought was being contemplated. I didn't realize the Secretary was trying to drive this to a solution today.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not doing that. It's been totally unclear what we're trying to do here. And so I guess we're then going to set off an informal process after this, is what you're saying, is your intent.
I think it's up to the auditor and the superintendent.
Mr. Chairman, I think our intent was to set off the regular rulemaking process.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
And that's what I've been.
In which case, I think these are not ready for prime time. I mean, nobody's had a chance. They arrived last night, and so they are not ready to proceed into a regular rulemaking process.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just want to make clear too of the work of the Rules Committee, our direction to staff and to our Attorney General representatives was to work on we wanted to get rules out particularly related exclusively to the passage of the law from this past session. And so that was our directive. I know that, I think what's happening here too is staff is trying to be efficient with work and try to talk about these other ones, which I think would be better suited for informal as you described. But the intent of our working group was really to get moving on the rules, particularly related to action from the legislature and the ability to conceal carry in public buildings. That was our focus.
Well, I'm going to stand on the notion that if we are proceeding to regular rulemaking, these have not been adequately reviewed by this commission. And so we'll take them under advisement and possibly consider a special session at some point. And we do have the provision for allowing for emergency rules that can make this happen. Mr. Treasurer.
Yeah, I'm just kind of following some discussion. I think that one, we probably should go ahead and split those apart like the auditor suggested. And then I think we can do an informal period and try to get back with depending on how the legislative committee can do it, is maybe get back in a couple of weeks or whenever and have a special meeting that just has that contemplates the promulgation, at that time period of these two different sets of rules.
Mr. Treasurer, my concern is that we have significant new portions of both sets of rules. I understand the ones are perhaps a bit more sensitive, considering open carry and conforming to the new law. The others are really about liability and insurance and all of that. And I'm just not sure that anybody has had the opportunity to fully.
And I agree with that, Mr. Chairman, that right now probably is a little bit premature, but trying to figure out some way where we can take informal comment on this work product that the committee has put together, and then come back in after they've got some of that comment, and then take a cut at maybe making emergency rules, and then moving forward with the promulgation. I think, didn't you say that and I'm speaking to the secretary, Mr. Chairman, is that on the concealed carry or whatever that is, open carry, whatever that passed, that the beginning of that was supposed to be the middle of July when you actually start beginning this process?
30 days after.
30 days after.
Mr. Chairman, Treasurer, yes, we're to begin this process.
Right.
No later than
I think
30 days.
I think it's great that we're way ahead of schedule, on these things. So, and I think that I could probably get comfortable going forward with these things, but if it's to get the comment period out, why don't we have an informal comment period, see if there's anything that really bounces up to where there's any changes at all. These things might be perfect. I don't know. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Superintendent.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we knew that it was a risk going into today if these would be completed in time when we had our last meeting. And so it was a tall ask of the AG's office to be able to do this. So we knew that this might not, and recognizing that we might have to have a special meeting. Our intent was, let's see if we can, get this to this meeting to be able to pass, but it's not the end of the world if we don't. I think we could have a special meeting. We don't want to wait till our next SBC meeting, but we could certainly have a special meeting on this, particularly as it relates to, our purpose of, conforming to the law.
Whatever you guys want on that legislative committee, I'm with you.
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Secretary.
I might recommend that in lieu of going to an informal comment period, that we just work on vetting this draft among the commission and Rules Working Group to come back with a better product at a special meeting.
Okay.
But as you all desire, of course.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that might be appropriate. Again, we received these this morning, which again, we knew this was going to be a tall ask. And so it's no slight on the ability to get this through. But then our Rules Committee could meet again to really go through all these changes. And then we could bring clean versions too of the distinction between conforming to law versus some of these additional clarifications that staff would ideally like if we're going to open up the rules, in any way.
So that seems to make a lot of sense. And unless there's some objection to that, I think we can proceed on that course. So I think there a lot of work has been done on this, and I think that it's really tweaks here and there. But Madam Auditor, it looks like you're ready to speak.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's, we are not late to the party. We are early, but we have, but that being said, why on earth would we wait till mid-July to start this process, right? The better, we can have a better product a lot earlier than that. So, I guess my question would be, what would be the timing? And sorry, let me back up. If we put out the rules for promulgation today, based on the timeline, we're probably already going to have emergency rules to at least gap 2 to 3 weeks. But if we don't put these out for promulgation today, I would really want to have a special meeting pretty soon in the next 2 weeks maybe. And I guess my question is that possible? Because even though we're early and we're in compliance with the law, I think this time period before this law goes into effect is, that's when we should be running our promulgation, right? So we're in a better place when it activates. So I guess there's a question in there somewhere that can we be committed? If we're not putting out anything for comment today, I want to get these out really soon. And I think my other members of would agree with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, Madam Auditor, I guess from my understanding, I think these could easily be, if that's something we want to do, but I would recommend your committee have a chance to review them, and then they could be posted. And that would constitute some sort of an informal review, and then we could have a special meeting. I would recommend we do this prior to our next SBC meeting. I think we just consider the motion to promulgate rules, which would then be corrected or adjusted. That would then start the formal comment period. And if we passed emergency rules in May, they would be effective July 1st.
So, sorry, Mr. Chairman, are you maybe anticipating 2 special meetings then? One to get these on the street and then a second one to pass emergency rules, or?
Yeah, I think that's kind of, I mean, what I'm concerned about is getting the timing right.
Yeah.
And I guess we have the provision allowing for emergency rules. I would like to have rules in place July 1st. And I think if we're delaying, which I think is in order here because we haven't really had a chance to review these, that then occasions us passing emergency rules.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think my intent is that when we do pass those emergency rules, we have let comment periods 45 days.
45 days, yeah, and can be extended if necessary.
Mr. Chairman, what I would love is when we pass those emergency rules, we've already let that whole 45 days run. So we know the lay of the land. We know everybody's had a chance to poke holes or whatever, so that our emergency rules essentially end up being what we're likely gonna ultimately adopt. So there's no confusion. I don't want to wait and pass emergency rules when we have only had a week or 2 of public comment and don't really have any input, because then my fear is our adopted rules end up looking different than our emergency rules. Which they can, but I think it contributes to confusion.
And I do appreciate that, Madam Auditor. I will say that our discretion is, to the Secretary's point, quite limited in in terms of carry provisions by the stats.
Yes.
So.
Mr. Chairman, to begin no later than 30 days, no later than 30 days
Yeah.
after the first, which we're on track. And
Yeah.
perhaps we could schedule a special SBC meeting in front of a SLIB meeting.
We could do that too. Very good. Is there anything
Now,
more?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions for the secretary.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand what the practice of the department has been, because I don't think you have an exemption from the permission to proceed. So are you asking for the permission to proceed after promulgation, in which case you're waiting another 10 days? I'm just very curious what your practice is. Are you not asking for it at all? Or are you asking for it before we go into a meeting where you're thinking we're going to promulgate, which in this case would have been impossible because I don't think they were drafted 10 days in advance. So, or maybe because, you know, sometimes with agencies, they'll grant it very quickly. We've never had that in the SOS office, I can say, but, you know, I'm trying to understand on terms of the permission to proceed, what has been the practice as we move forward? Because for the department, which of those three have the department been doing?
Mr. Chairman, in regard to the permission to move forward, you are correct that, you know, this hasn't been vetted. That permission has not happened. Today's goal was to bring this draft of the rules to the commission for discussion.
Okay, so I think typically what you've been doing is after the promulgation vote, you proceed with permission to proceed. I'm also wondering about past practice. I'm very curious because I'm
Mr. Chairman, Secretary, you could
fascinated with this
the
process.
State Building Commission minutes for the dates and times of how we've moved forward, and also the procedural information in the rules packet is submitted to the Secretary of State's administrative rules process, where I believe all those things are checked to make sure we follow the administrative procedures correctly. Mr. Chairman, we have our attorney generals here to assist with suggestions on how to move forward with this process.
Mr.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, Commission, and certainly ask whatever questions you want. Sorry, I should introduce myself. Devin Kenny with the Attorney General's Office, and this is Tabitha Wolf also with the Attorney General's Office. As regards the notice to proceed, I don't know that there's a specific formal practice of the way it has to occur. What I generally have advised other agencies is that when you are expecting, in case of a board, if it's the case of just an agency where the director can adopt them, it's different because, of course, you don't have to wait for the board to have a meeting to do that. But if you are in a situation where there is a board, what I would typically recommend is that if you expect at the next board meeting that they're going to be promulgating rules, that in advance of that board meeting, you request a notice to proceed, that you send them. It doesn't necessarily have to occur in that manner. But that way, if the governor was to not give the notice to proceed, it would be less an awkward situation. If the board has already promulgated the rules, it makes it sort of an awkward situation if that were to occur. I don't know that it necessarily has to be that way. I do think that's a better practice.
So, Mr. McKinney, I guess just sort of trying to back up to a timeline that people can understand. Assuming there are corrections and people have a chance to review these this commission has a chance to review these rules and make any kind of changes, and that comes back out. If they come in the form of an emergency, they can come forward and they can be not promulgated, they can be put in place as emergency rules. And to the auditor's point, she would like to make sure that whatever the emergency rules look like are substantially similar to what the regular rules would look like. That makes sense, and that certainly is something that would be of value. If there is a significant revision between the emergency and the regular rules, then the process would be for the emergency rules to be withdrawn. Is that correct? And then another set could be put in place.
Chairman, that is correct. That doesn't necessarily have to be the way. So typically, if you're going to do emergency rules, unless the situation is something that is just sort of a one-off and you just need emergency rules, you're not expecting that it's going to continue. In that event, you only have emergency rules. But typically, that's not the situation. You also want regular rules to continue in effect. So generally speaking, what we would advise is that since emergency rules can be in effect for a total of 240 days, 120 days, and then another 120 days, that you start the regular rulemaking process at or at least near the same time as beginning the emergency rules process. Generally speaking, you want them to be the same. I mean, whatever reason it is that's the emergency, if it's justifying changing the rules on a temporary basis, it makes sense to change them in the same way on a permanent basis. However, if, let's say you start the emergency rules process and something happens with the emergency rules, not that they, but you discover while they're in effect that, maybe they made an error in the way they were drafted, or perhaps that when you actually put them into practice, that there's something about them that you don't think is working, or you want to make further changes, you can certainly do that. If you have started the regular rule process, you would have to stop it so that you could have a new rules draft. You could continue with the same emergency rules draft. I mean, you could leave it in effect. However, if, again, the reason you wanted to change the regular rules was because there was a problem with the emergency rules, presumably you would also want to change the emergency rules to fix whatever that problem was. If that was the case, then you would, it would, since emergency rules can go into effect very quickly, it would make sense to just pull them back. I mean, there might be instances where you were to discover that the emergency rules are fine, but there's some non-emergency situation you also wanted to tweak. In that instance, maybe it doesn't make sense to pull them back. It's not an emergency thing that's changing them. Maybe you just pull back the regular rules because you want to make further tweaks to that. But generally speaking, yes, if the issue is something that is germane to what the emergency rules were doing, you probably would want to pull them back, because whatever the issue is, if you wanted to change it permanently, you probably also want to change it on a temporary basis.
And thank you for that, Mr. McKinney. And I think it is probably our intent to make sure that both a regular rule set is out for comment, and if at the same time an emergency set of rules would go into effect. It's also our intent to take into consideration public comment. I mean, that's the point. And so if there are changes to be made, the emergent piece of this to me is that July 1st deadline. I understand that there's a 30-day period afterwards, but to avoid confusion, which we've not done a very good job of avoiding today, I want to make sure that we try to kind of have some approach here that makes sense to the public.
Chairman, Governor, I would agree. I mean, there are a number of situations that could justify emergency rules. We saw some during COVID, for example, but that is probably the most common sort of scenario that I've seen, is where there is an effective date that, that says you need to make rules in compliance, or not necessarily anything you make rules, but that the statute is such that your existing rules now conflict. And the only way to bring them into compliance is to change the rules, but you can't make the effective date. There's just not enough time.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, but I think it would be valuable for the rules subcommittee to have the time to digest, look at, see if there are any kinds of corrections to be made, and then we can take under advisement when a more formal effort can be made. Does that make sense?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I do think we want to get this done. I do think that rolling out Section 6 was important. But yeah, certainly we have a path forward and we definitely want to get this done. I do think that all the stuff in front of regarding capital demonstrations or events is just entirely separate and a separate conversation.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Is there anything more on this topic? If there isn't, Madam Secretary, let's move on.
Mr. Chairman, item 8 suggests we move to executive session to discuss matters appropriate to 16-4-405A 3 through 7 relating to legal advice and security projects.
So members of the commission, you've heard the secretary of the commission. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, madam.
would move to enter executive session in 5 minutes time for a quick break.
Oh, I'm sure we can take a
Okay,
quick break.
all right.
So we can, well, let's move to session, then we can take a break and we'll come back in executive session. So is there a second for that motion?
Second.
It's been seconded and it's for purpose of taking legal advice. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? That motion carries. We will be in executive session when we come back. Thank you. We'll take at least a 5-minute break. What? We'll be here.